Hello everyone, how's it going today? Today I'm gonna do kind of a brake wheel job, and what that's gonna include is the R1 Concepts, I guess, Performance Series, more like a track pad. Had these on the car prior to and did quite a few track sessions with them and never ran into an issue. The issue that I have had recently is I'm getting a lot of squeal, and looking at the pads it looks like they're pretty worn. So today we swapping these out, as well as putting some ARP extended wheel studs. Now, haven't broken any stud, but the reason why I wanted to do this is, one, I found them for pretty cheap through a Facebook deal, but also whenever I go out to shows or anything, I spend a lot of time cleaning the car. And if you can see on the inside of these wheel lugs here, there's rust. Now the rust necessarily isn't from these actual lug nuts themselves, it's from the actual stud that rusts. So with these being extended, it's going to take care of that look for me, as well as just, I guess, blend a little bit better, actually being able to see something in here rather than an open hole. So I'm going to get the car jacked up and we'll get to it. Now these brake pads look like they have a little bit of life on them left, but they are kind of wearing out, look a little rough. So you can either do this one or two ways. Now with me, I'm going to be taking off the rotor as well as the caliper here. So you can take off the caliper and remove the brake pads, or what I'm going to do is, since everything's secure here, I'm going to actually pull out this pin here, the pin here, punch these straight pins out, you remove this part here, and pads will simply slide out. Just kind of make it a little bit easier for me, rather than trying to hold this whole caliper itself while taking out these pads and pins. Okay, so I have the brake pads removed. As you can see, there's still a little bit of life on these, but I think the issue mainly was that this backing plate, it just kind of burned off. And as you can see, the new ones, fresh backing plate, as well as a whole lot more pad on it. So it's definitely going to help me compared to how these are. Plus I've done quite a few track days with these, so really I think they're just kind of like burn up and worn out. So I'm looking at the back of the caliper. There's a 19mm bolt right here, as well as up at the top. And another thing you want to do is make sure that you remove this brake line from that very top, which is a 10mm that's holding it on. So I'm gonna head and pull these two out and caliper will come off. So now that you have the caliper off, all you have to do is just use your 10mm and stick it in here. That was originally right on your line. As you twist this, it'll push, pop this rotor off. Now that you have your rotor off, you'll see your studs, and as you can tell too, they're kind of stuck right here. So what you have to do is actually twist this whole assembly here to the open point and just hammer them out one by one. So now I have all of the old studs removed, and I was actually surprised. I'll let you know that it's easier to hammer out than I actually expected. Thought I was going to need a big hammer, but all I used was just this little ballpoint hammer here. As you can see, these studs are a whole lot bigger, or I guess you could say longer. All you pretty much have to do now is work around, fit this in, and since I actually have the open-ended lugs, I'll show you here. All I have to do is just screw it on, tighten it down, and these actually have the cone bottoms, so they spin, so it won't be any type of issue with it grinding on here. And basically it'll just seat it for me. So I now have 4 in, and I'm going to show you my process. It was a little different. Originally I thought you could just stick it in here, tighten it down, but the issue is whenever you're trying to tighten it, it spins. So what I've done is I pull it in, hold it, use a hammer, kind of hit on it, Now the other thing that I've done is just taken a socket, fits through there, show you here, and then once I have that on there, I just set this washer on here. It tightens down pretty easy. So I now have the wheel studs all in front. It's actually a whole lot easier than I expected. The rear, we'll get to it here in a minute. But whenever you're putting your caliper back on, as you can see, these actual pistons on the inside kind of stick out a little bit. So what I do actually is just take an old brake pad, fit it against there, then I use this vice clamp to squeeze it to make sure that all those pistons are flush against the actual caliper itself before I reinsert it onto the actual rotor portion. Once that's done, the new actual pads, just grease them up here. This is what I prefer. Put them in, then you take your pins, push them back in, put the little clips, and that's it. So whenever you're doing this project, you want to make sure that your old lug nuts actually fit good on these fully. As you can see, I have brand new lug nuts because of that reason. And what had happened, let me show you here, is I put the new ones on, completely just tore off the threads. Now the reason for it is because the old lug nuts will get hot and threads kind of form to your old stud pattern. So whenever you put new ones on, even though it's the same size, it may not thread correctly. So like I said, the biggest thing you want to do before you even start anything on this job is take off the lug nut, put it on the stud, make sure it screws down fully all the way. So what I'm working on now is just getting these new lug nuts seated. It's as simple as that. Get them seated, put the wheel back on, and you're ready to go. Okay, so let's move on to the rears. As you can see right here, it's kind of like the front. You have two cotter pins where you'll pull these out. And then just use a little punch to knock these pins here out. Once you do that, this middle piece will be removed. You'll have access to your brake pads. So as you can see, there's a bolt right here, and then one right down here below. And there's 17 millimeters. Once you remove those, this caliper here will be free. Alright, now it's time to put this bolt in here to get this rotor off. Now you want to make sure that you have your parking brake off, otherwise it's not going to work. Now I would suggest with your jack, putting a stand down here as well as a wheel chock in the front. That way as you're beating on this and moving it around, you don't have to worry about the car slipping. Now I want to be as fully detailed as I can. What you're going to do is remove the spring here, 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 and then with these clips here, you kind of push down there. In this part here, you get some needle nose pliers, twist it from horizontal to vertical, and these clips will come out. Now don't worry too much, I'll show you exactly how to put it all back together, but just for your reference as well, you may want to take a picture during this time. I do want to mention as well as this spring right here is going to be on the opposite side, on the driver's side of the car, so it may throw you off whenever you're trying to put it back together. So I just want to make sure to note that here. Alright, so we got this parking brake off here. Like I said, don't worry if yours all comes apart like this too. I'll show you how to put each piece on step by step. And before we get into anything else, we want to go ahead and hammer out these studs. So that's what I'm going to work on now, is just getting these out and getting ready to put the new ones in. Now if you're just putting in regular studs, you can go ahead and start putting them in now, but the issue that I have is whenever I try to fit these other studs in, there's literally no way that you can get it. So seeing it flat, you can see here, it's not going to go in. So what we're going to do is, you can see here, 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 and here, there's going to be 4 bolts, and it's right on the other side of this brake dust shield area. And I was going to mention too, you have these little parts here for your brake pads, or your parking pads, so you can either leave these in or take them out, but just remember that if you do lose one, it goes right here, and there's another one right here on the opposite side. So there you go. Now what I'm going to do is get at the back, And take those 4 bolts out now. I believe that they're 14 millimeter. Alright. Now this is just going to be a tip right here. You don't necessarily have to do it, but you definitely want to put some PB Blaster if you see a lot of kind of like a rust right around this area here. And then also right along the back side. I'll try to show you as I do it. Right along here. And just let that sit for a little bit, and we'll move on to the next part. If you look on the top right here, there's a brake sensor, and we'll use a 10 millimeter to get that off. Okay, so all the tips I have for you, I'll go ahead and give it to you now. With this itself, what you're wanting to do is kind of get this loose. That way you can wiggle it and pull it out. As you can see, this is just super tight. And once you wiggle it and pull it out, you're also wanting to separate this part from right here. So you'll see in the back, as you go, you'll notice that the hub piece will start coming out towards you, and it'll give you extra room. So basically you're wanting to separate this from this to get a little bit more clearance to put that stud in there. Like I said, I'm gonna kind of hit it around here with the hammer, knock it loose, as well as whenever you get over to this part, you can also put a flathead in there. Now one thing you don't want to do is hammer directly onto this and bend it. So you want to be really light. Whenever I did hammer on this piece, I was hitting right here and here just to get enough gap to fit the flathead in. Now I have all the studs in. I want to tell you that the sweet spot is right in here. So once you fit the actual stud itself kind of in that spot, it's really easy. But I want to say too, don't get discouraged if you're having trouble getting these studs in. They are a little bit of a pain, but once you get the first one and figure out how to actually hold everything to get the other ones in, it's quite simple. Now all I have to do is kind of realign the shield as well as this hub assembly piece here, and you can put the 4 bolts back in. You want to tighten those up first before you start messing with anything else. Now I have the 4 screws back in. It's actually pretty easy. I'm sure yours will be like mine. You can really just do them all by hand till you tighten them down. And tighten them down, you don't need to do too much of a torque, just tighten them up pretty firm. Now you want to make sure that you put the sensor back in the top and put it in with the 10 millimeter bolt. Alright, now I had to stop the camera because I was having trouble pulling the spring back, but what I did is pull it back with my hands and then squeeze it with pliers, that way I could fit it back on. Now your next step is just going to be to get these aligned like this, and what you do is just fit this piece in the middle here. Then once you get this fitted, you want to hold this up. And you take this spring here and simply put it in between the two. So once you have the bottom piece in here like this with the spring, you can take, let me grab one here and just show you. You can take this piece here, you fit it through the back, wherever you find the hole. There we go. Once you have this fitted in here, you take one of these clips, set it in, So once you get the bottom piece fitted in here, you want to move to the top portion and you want to go ahead and get these in. I was trying to do it on camera, but it wasn't really working. But once you get these in, it'll secure everything. That way you can fit in the rest. Now, what I have here is just this little bolt. And what I'm going to do is turn it this way, like here, press it, and then you twist it the horizontal way to lock it. Now that you have these two side pieces in, the way that I did it was just to use a flathead like this, just to press it down, and then some pliers to turn it. Now what you're gonna want to do now, you have this piece here, so you'll remove one of these springs, that way you can separate this out. You fit this piece in, and it literally is just a spring that attaches in here and hooks and holds in right on that little hole. Now to actually get this one in, I did have to remove the two top ones. So I guess the way to do it is to get the bottom one started, put the two top ones in to hold it, put these side clips in, remove the top ones, fit this clip in, and then last is fit the tops. Now it's kind of a process, kind of a pain, but not too hard to do, I guess, following these steps here. So now we have everything all put back together, and what we're going to do is just seat the studs now. So I'm going back to the washer method. Just put the washer on, like so. Put the lug on and tighten down. And you can actually see at the back here whenever the stud is actually fully seated. Now you have the studs all in. What I'm going to do is just place the caliper back on after I set the rotor here, and use these two 17 millimeters to tighten the caliper back together. So I'll just show you here how these, I guess, pins are going through here. You can see through the middle part, it goes over top, and then underneath both of the sides. So now I have everything complete. Now all I gotta do is just throw the wheel on, torque it down, we'll be set. After I threw the wheels back on, I just guess I was too excited to start driving the car again. I had been down about a week while I was waiting on those new lug nuts to come in. So that's one thing to really take from this video, is make sure that the lug nuts thread down all the way onto the studs before you even start lifting up the car in this whole process. I'll show you what it looks like now. Looks a whole lot better in my opinion. You can see the studs going towards the end of the lugs. Try to get a good side angle. You can see it just stops there. These were the new Techie lug nuts I got. They're pretty cheap compared to the Project Kick ones I had before, but they had the quickest shipping. That's why I went with those. Probably swap them out again later on, but for now, these are doing the job just fine. So if you have any questions, feel free to message me on Instagram at WRX_snowboarder, or you can comment below and I should reply to you here pretty quick. I hope this video helped all of you, and as always, happy driving and enjoy.